delay it and start with another point. I will speak now and wait for the sunlight so that we can see better. Let us now think a little bit about what is around the port. Let us now see which are the challenges and the strategic positioning of ports in these challenges. This is like everything else. Life has paradigms, and they keep changing. For example, made in, made by, delivered by. Made in, maybe we don't have anyone online, anyone from Finland, but I'm going to give that example. Made in Finland has sold, was a product that sold, yes, made in Finland sells well. It used to, because of differentiated design, I'm sure you remember that. Then we moved to made by Nokia. It used to sell very well. It used to be the main producer of mobile appliances in the world, but it is no longer. But even made by Nokia, that no longer sell. The Mark My Vodafone sales globally in a scaled business. So paradigms evolved, and in between made by and delivered by, made in required logistics, made by requires logistic and delivered by. Now made us assume that in some way logistics is part of the product. It is part of the product, logistics. We have to pay attention to paradigm evolution and to the way in which we position our sectors face of those paradigms. Professor of economics of good reputation in Portugal, João Ferreira do Amaral. I think the people here in Portugal know him. It is interesting because he is against the euro. He defends that Portugal should exit the euro, but those are other issues. But he studies economics and these issues, and he says something quite important. He personally added this variable to information management systems. Information has various features, emittent, receptor, relevance, integrity, and surprise as well. Surprise, for example, the 2008 crisis, it was not a surprise, probably to those who created it, who generated it. It was not a surprise for those, and they took advantage from the crisis. And the surprise factor is a factor we need to pay attention to, and to have an observatory on this paradigm is extremely important to the survival of companies, of enterprises. Delivered by, the paradigm of delivered by, states that logistics integrates value in the product and scales globally. It scales globally things that are regional, things that are from a reference manufacturer at a global scale in a dimension that the initial business model did not foresee. Another aspect that conditions, well, this is questionable. Sometimes we watch the figures, the projection figures, and we don't realize, we don't understand where they come from, and nobody attacks them. We have projections. Europe has them. We all have them. Europe has projections, and Europe assumes that logistics is essential for European economy. Europe has 505 million inhabitants, and their activities of production or anything else require logistics, and Europe assumes that logistics is essential to the development of the European economics. And so it finances improvements in infrastructure, in the way business is carried out, in innovation, in all those aspects. More recently, especially last year, the issue was on the table. 2 years ago, it was at the negotiation table. The transatlantic trade deal of the commercial space of the USA and Canada enlarged this opportunity, this market opportunity, to 900 million inhabitants. And someone then projected that the economy will boost by 120 billion euros, indexed at this enlargement of the market. Of course, there are many risks. A road has two ways, two lanes. We can reach it competitive, our destination, but people from the other end may reach us competitively as well. And so the advantage is not established because we reached an agreement. We must finance and guarantee that the deal is profitable for us as well, as long as we are not being dishonest by profiting. It has to be legitimate, but we must profit from the deal. Ports have, or in fact, play a major role in this process. In the transatlantic space, in terms of capacity models, the maritime model is significant. But are ports prepared, Portuguese ports, or French ports, are they prepared for this increase in commercial, in trading, which the American space, maybe they are not. So we must see how we can take advantage of this opportunity, but this is a strategic condition. The European Commissioner for Trade, Karel de Gucht, has said that the GDP, European GDP, will increase 0.5 to 1%. 0.5 to 1% is not relevant. What is significant is the serious European problem, unemployment rate, and that is a relevant problem. And so let us now focus our attention in this sector, in the logistics sector. Europe is now tripling investment in infrastructure, in the development of infrastructure. This is part of the package of incentives to create conditions that will enable us to profit from the agreement, these transatlantic deals and so forth. But it was not only because of the transatlantic deal, and that we'll see later, development of the core network, the land and air networks, rail and road networks, has been dispersed, scattered. Development is scattered. And work is relevant, but the timing is wrong. Road from here to Lisbon. If you build a little bit between Tomar and Leiria and another little bit between Porto and Gaia, the benefit is no. The benefit is in investing in a canal, and after we sell it, we will invest in another one. And each of these slices has its benefit. And the infrastructure development is the coordinated development of the infrastructure. And because problems cannot be solved all at the same time, there's no capacity to do it, neither financially nor in terms of human capacity to carry out that transformation process. Because of that, Europe has decided to focus investment on infrastructure in the main network, the core network. That is the comprehensive network. They have focused investment in the core network. For the first time in 2014, Europe reached a very important decision. The idea of the motorways of the seas, of the Baltic Sea, of the Atlantic, of the Mediterranean Sea, etc. They also have main and secondary ports. And the DGMove, the General Director of Transport Mobility, has decided that the design of the core network will incorporate the motorways of the sea. The core network begins or ends at a port of the core network of the motorways of the sea. So they have matched these two realities in a way that the benefit generation can be accelerated. The benefit around the very intelligently. We are investing hundreds of millions of euros in the infrastructure. Why? What for? So that the benefit reaches the real economy. And to have benefit you must invest in more than in infrastructure. You must invest in the infrastructure. You must innovate the way you do logistics business on this infrastructure. It is not enough to build a railway road or a port or a terminal. That is not enough. That is not the end in itself. That is done. It has to be done together with investment in the infrastructure in a way that you are able to transfer value to people and to the real economy. And that investment in the infrastructure, in innovation in the way we do business, is investment that must take into account two fundamental things. First, it must center in the expectations of the clients of logistics service. It is the cargo that pays for transport, not the driver. That's what people say. It's not the couple that goes on a road at the weekend that pays the motorway. It is the economic activity that pays for roads. And focusing in the expectations of the clients of logistics services is very important. That is a central driver to be able to assess and evaluate the projects, the forms of improving ways of doing business. Improving the way of doing business needs to take this into consideration. Another important driver is that this has to be accompanied by a way of changing the form of doing business. And that change collides with habits, with the present-day situation. And to change anything is an unnatural process. It costs money. There must be an incentive to change so that companies, because logistics, and you are from the private sector, the shipping agents, transport companies, private companies, not the state. Because of that, it is important that the private sector wants to change its business paradigm. If that does not happen, in Portugal we have an interesting saying, difficult to translate. Well, when we discuss a lot of things, things never change. That's what the saying says, means. The purpose is not that. Is to actually change and transform the way of doing business, and to make sure that, to begin with, the private sector carries out its mission on that. It has an important role on that. It is the private sector that sells logistics services. It is the private sector that deals with logistics, not the public sector. And in the same way, there have to be changes in mentality to expand this transformation dynamics. One of the things underlying this is that when realities are very different and scattered, they have to be regulated, standardized, and especially the questions of liability, of responsibility, and what to do and when to do it have to be carefully explained. There is something here that I have not the courage to explain more. It was a concept that did not exist before. The European Commission told us you have to separate and explain well what is private and what is public, what is more or less. You have to explain it very clearly. Until you have explained it, variables are so many that there is no solution. And so we have divided the world into two. Into the administration domain and into the business domain. And the relations between these administrations, for example, the customs administration, the Portuguese and the Italian one, the relations These two administrations are administration to administration. There are no A to A relations, but relations between one Italian entity and a Portuguese entity. Relations between administrations. There are other relations, also well known, between two entities, two business entities. Those are the B2B relations, B2B. Relations between two distinct entities, but of the same domain, of the same area of business. Then you have the B2A, business to administration relations, and the A2B, administration to business relations. The former are declarative acts, typically. You know what a manifest is? You know you have to hand it in. It must reach customs. And the port authority delivers it to customs. It collects the declarative acts. And so the declarative act is A to A relation.
And then there is a reflux also, which are the administration to business relations between an entity of the administration domain and the business domain. What is this? This is, for example, the statistics, the Eurostat statistics. They concentrate information, they aggregate information, and they produce, for example, they send back to business consolidated information, many times anonymous, but it has value, mission of value, and result of concentration and training. For example, here in Portugal, we're using the protocol for the Association of Shipping Agents, electronic transactions, to transmit the movement of all the national ports in order that that association can have information about the management and the movement of ships and cargo in all national ports. We are working in A to B relations, and this is extremely important because, see, that's more important, the port here, because the port has functions in the domain of the administration and functions in the domain of business. The terminal operator and business-to-business customs who are here are entities of the administrations. The port has the activity and processes in these two domains. And so we have explained this. I will show you something that is in annex here. You will have the file then. It is a set of roll-ups that we executed. We did this in a project previous to the one that we are working now, which is the MEL project. MEL multimodal internal. For logistics and sustained development. But in this process, in this project, we explained for the Portuguese case what were exactly the systems. This is a diagram of components on the administration domain here in dark blue, and the components that were in the business domain in this weird green that you have here. And the port, in fact, is one of these frames. It has systems, campaign components in the administration domain and the business domain also. For example, on business domain, the system of terminals, the part of the PSW that goes to the exterior regarding services to ship, to passengers, to the crew, to the cargo, different transport modes that exist. This part here is the port with business domain through this platform. The port as a service and not as a set of services. And then you have the port single window scope, the vessel traffic service that has A2A relations with the coastal system. Yes. With the SDS also, it's this one here, this component. The transit and export are here also of the custom system. If we were to go here for the A2A relations, we see, for example, curious things. Port single window directly connected with the transit system. And these three systems has to do with phytosanitary and veterinary processes. And we also have things as, for example, a relation, a direct relation, also with, for example, with statistics, with the National Institute for Statistics, that by its hand relates itself with an institution of us, which is Eurostat. See? And only looking to the domain of the administrations, we have those institutional barriers that, in fact, are not finished in the frontiers of Portugal. They continue abroad, and they serve as the head for national systems. These are European systems, all of these here. These are the systems of the member state of Portugal. And these are the systems of the port that have a European level, a member state level, and a port level. We'll now perform a very simple exercise. I will try to, let's see, well, it's not possible, but I will try to help you for those who are online to try and understand. If, for example, a ship comes from outside of the European space and it comes to the relationship port, that means that the services to the ship, not to the crew, but to the ship, they need to present the crew the declarative act of B2A when the use of TPSS crosses this border that's here, and so it goes to the component, which is a port single window, cross the border, so it's B2A. And here you have the declarative act. This act will then be used here above the port single window by CES, by the Immigration Service. Those services, those immigration services are not here. It's an actor, not a service. But will also relate with this competence here of immigration. It's the SED system that I don't remember how it's called, but by its hand relates itself with an European system. It's this one barrier here that continues, and it connects to the competence of immigration of the Spain member state. If the next scale of the ship is in Valencia or in Genoa, what happens is that this decorative act that reduced here was sent to the central system of the member states for Spain also. Of these ports, it comes to the immigration system that then sends it to the port of Valencia, and this decorative act is valid in the port of Valencia. It doesn't need to be repeated. And so it's one-stop shop. When it enters European space, and then it goes around Europe throughout the domain, and all this information in order not to repeat the decorative acts. Other sceneries. If the ship comes from outside of Europe and comes to Leixões, decorative acts, list of the crew, Leixões, the automatic systems consolidated immigration, immigration is one for all, and it's available for any other country, but then it goes to Lisbon. The member state system sends the decorative act for the port of Lisbon, and then it updates that act. 2 members of the crew went out and 3 came in, and that update is made in the port of Lisbon. It goes to the member state system. From the member state system, it goes to SIS1 for all, or SIS1 for all becomes available to another member state. When it comes from one exterior space to the European space, and then there are updates. If they are applicable, there are no repetition of decorative acts. And it is within this shape that Europe wants to transfer with these investments that are being made in the administrative domain. And this is the ANA project. I don't know if you heard of it. The project ANA, it's Advanced National Networks for Administrations, which is a project that is consulting the placing in the placing in the terrain of the Directive EU 2010/65. The 65 Directive, which is a preview of something else, that is the update of the Fall Convention of facilitation of the IMO. And so, Anna, and we are finishing our participation in it also, we will have a pilot of articulation within the administration domain in order to build continuously in European space without barriers, to simplify the costs of maritime operators that are within the European space in such a way to transfer value from the administration domain to the business domain. Because if the costs of context of European navigation are lower, the costs for the economy also are lower. And so I would say that in this sector, it's not exactly like this, but all the companies would have money to earn, because they would put the costs to the client, and the client had to pay. And so there are context costs that need to be optimized by these projects. When these projects are assessed, they are by the potential of generating benefits also. And we have an expert in the room in that subject, right? Okay. There we are, building a European space without barriers, with control and monitoring on European level, on the member state level, and also and on the port level. For example, the directive of safety net, for example, that includes the hazardous materials, pollutants, and dangerous cargo. It's a directive that has a barrier of entry, the system that you can see above. That's European. And it's just not crossing information, it says procedures of monitoring and control that are considered on European level. On the level of the member states, it's the GRM, the General Direction for Natural Resources, and Maritime Services, Maritime Safety, which has a system that you don't need to know anything about. You just need to know that it exists, because those systems with our port single window. And so we are building an European space without barriers in order to divide the costs of contact for maritime operators. And I would say that the convention is being reviewed, and it will arrive to this review in a terrain maybe in 12, 15 years. Then you have the amendments, moratorium, and some way ship owners are trying to foster a factor reaction in order to place this contact in practice. So we finished the pilot, the biggest part of this pilot in the end of May, and so we are closing a cycle up until the end of November of this year. And so we hope to have this question answered. Pilot projects are not to put things in execution, it's to create things that then will be executed. So after this, just to give you a small hint, this is not like this is the future, but there are things that you know about. There are buses also in the business domain. We have buses in the business domain. Intra, GTNX, CalSmart. These are shipping portals that you have used before. Just Intra itself has more than 90% of the offer of maritime transport of containers worldwide. I think they have 60–65% regarding all the shipping services. But for containers, they have more than 90%. Shipping portals, these are portals that have published an offer of CGM, Evergreen, all the ship owners. Of course, at this, okay, still know how to use this. All the ship owners publish an offer or make visible the offer in the shipping portal. Interjet Next and CargoSmart. These are familiar to you, right? Because in the business domain, they are doing their work, right? Yeah, it's doing their work. So for the first time, because in the middle project, we made the explanation of all the systems that exist. This doesn't mean that there are no more systems. Of course there are, but we don't know about them. It was the first time that we have shown in the diagram it was made by us in this project. But please, keep this idea in mind. The shipping portals are not horizontally here in Portugal, same as the others. These have services worldwide. This goes beyond Europe. Just to tell you some things that exist that are in the field. Please see these denominations. Commander Cunha told you about the maritime. The MO69, yes, which is the central system for Ansel, heat and S-heat. The schemes with some regions that have different zones by regions throughout Europe. The MARD system, which is the system of acquisition of AIS that has to do also with the EPS and LIS. For example, the LUMAS-MED, where we have the police of the Mediterranean, they cooperate among themselves. Police force of the Mediterranean, the TETIS, which is a system that is hosted also in EMSA, in European Agents for Maritime Safety. TETIS is a system to inspect ships. The inspector comes here to have the port state control performed. Inspections are managed in the system. There's one for all that has to do with Schengen space, the free transit and the charging information traces, which is a system in which they published veterinarian and phytosanitary inspections also. The two custom systems where I believe not with a great impact, in fact, because the shipping did not comply, did not agree with this definition to the benefit that they would obtain with two authorities. They didn't think it was enough, I believe. But there is something funny here. They have a network, private network, let's call it like that, of a communication infrastructure between the systems of the member states that are not storing data. They are not processing data. They are vehicles of transmission only. You see? This network, the CCRSI, the SI it has nothing to do with security initiative. You have the Eurostat also, the SSNet. These are all European buses that are related to the systems of the member states that then by its hands are relating to the ports themselves. For example, we had an heresy here in the previous project, which is to cross a direct access to traces with our PSW. In order to make available here to the veterinary inspection means to confront the manifest to what was in traces, that cargo manifest that was in traces, to accelerate the customs clearance in veterinarian perspective. A lot of things are moving here. And for example, on the national level, this is not very common, but on the national level, all the ports relate themselves with the systems of the member states throughout the VPN, a virtual private network. There is an infrastructure for communication in which, for example, the port single window of Lachunge relates itself with the STS through this private network. All this is applied with the exception of the model that is here in the central area. This model here in the central area, it's a matter of platforms that interact throughout an infrastructure of communication of a certain architecture that interact with all the service providers of logistics. But this is the future. This is not like that nowadays. Today it's just a pilot, okay? Okay, so I'll exit here.
We could stay here. For sure, 2 months discussing this. I'm not exaggerating. One of the trainees is leaving, saying goodbye. Well, we're now here to show you that these simple things here the simple thing here is not as simple as it seems, like everything else. The European infrastructure obeys a plan. Please note that what we see here, you can't read it, but do you see the colors? These are different phases: investments in the core network, the timing of investments in the core network. If we see it in more detail in the website of DG Move, all this information is there available. There's basically a European coordinator, and he has a transnational mission, not country for country, for each of the main corridors. There is the coordinator for the Atlantic, for the Mediterranean. We have many corridors. There are 9 corridors in the core network, each with a European coordinator with a transnational mission to coordinate investment and development of the corridor. Not just the investment in infrastructure, but development of the business. And there are 2 special coordinators, the EU coordinator for railways and the EU coordinator for the motorways of the sea. Until a year ago, maybe, it was our Professor Valente Oliveira, and now it is Mr. Brian Simpson, the European coordinator for the motorway of the sea. And they sponsor development of the corridors. Their responsibilities include articulating and creating the conditions for the development of the corridors, and that the business of the corridors develops as well. It is very complicated. Imagine the Mediterranean corridor. It is based on E80. It goes from Lisbon to Sines until Turkey. So it is widespread. It is complicated. The E80, the corridor is slightly smaller. And so let's come to the drivers. In the infrastructure area, we have mentioned the plan to develop them, the financing sources, and the entities such as ports that pick up the funding to develop the infrastructure, and that is based on the core network, and those who are outside the core network have to wait. In land or air pathways, and in land waterways, use the corridors. Now that we have aged a little bit, at least myself, I have come of age, we like to think with our own head. So in the previous project, we listened to a lot of stakeholders directly to understand their expectations, the expectations of the logistics services clients. And the first expectation, the most important one, that they all mentioned was to improve visibility across the chain. And what for? So that they would trust and would have capability to respond to any unexpected event. One of them told us that once there was a train loaded with material, halted in Germany for a week, and nobody knew where it was, in Germany. Imagine that. So it is important, and he found out because the client didn't receive the order on time, and the production process stopped, and so it was only with the backtrack that they discovered, and it was the railway broker that introduced a very heavy carriage, and that caused a problem that took 1 week to be solved. It was a problem of performance. And then it didn't have the capacity or flexibility to handle the problem without transferring problems to the client. And so improve visibility. Second question, they want a more transparent market, a more efficient market. They want access to logistics in real time. When we acquire an air ticket on a mobility site, on e-booking, on Kayak, we quickly see it go through a lot of catalogs and do it on real time. And we incorporate logistics on real time on the phone, and that's what they want. That's the second thing they want. They are aware, that is why it is in the middle, this one, that there must be standardization and harmonization, because otherwise everyone is speaking in a different language and people don't understand themselves. There's need, their expectations, this is a strange one. Their expectations is that each one does his own job. And that it comes to e-booking, and that we come to e-booking. E-booking is very complicated. It contains systems that allow us to hire services, to contract services. Yes and no. Many companies in the sector put my price there, they say. No, no way. Don't even think about it. Okay? But they want that. And so we have to find dynamics that regulates and helps to put in place these expectations. They want it. And some services already publish their prices. But then there's another question, and you know it well. The clients want to negotiate the price. And so when we give them discounts in the catalog, there must be an action from the provider of services to the catalog saying, for this person, for this business, this is my price. This is not the price to sell to the public or to any other partner. It is a different price. It is a price for that business. They want this. They want to find different prices, try and source services, but then I cannot hire. I am losing money. See? The most curious and surprising thing is that they know exactly that the layer of logistics can only transfer value to them if they find collaborative platforms in which they can collaborate. And collaborate is not exchange data about clients. It's to go and do business with collaborative capacities, because alone I cannot do it efficiently. Is to have the capacity to create solutions, one's based on the other, collaborative solutions, to do things, to get things done. And they know already that this transformation must occur in the sector. See? And of course, this raises some questions, things that are already old, such as the coverage of risk, of documentary credits. They think that little has been done. Barcelona, Portugal has work done about it, and there are other realities that have it, but they feel that this is not enough. Not enough work has been done. There is not a holistic vision on this subject, on the needs of and expectations. So their attitude, they will be your clients, and not only because you are also clients of logistic service providers, and you are providers of logistic services, and we have providers of logistic services as well as stakeholders in this project, but your clients know what you have to do, but they also feel they can say this, that you must do what you must do. You are the ones who have to act, and within a framework that we must create. We were the only country that carried out this study with its stakeholders in this project. And so they have a vision. They know how complex this is, and their vision is pragmatic. Searching for solutions, planning, booking, hiring, execution management, and visibility. This is what they want. And note, this is also innovation. This is nothing new. None of this is new. What we do after is to apply things that are in fact innovative, because this is not new. But this practice, this is the best practice that comes from private networks of private mail, but does not exist in public networks of logistic services. It is also in innovation in the sector of activity. We have integrated here best practices from other sectors, but it is complicated to implement it, to integrate it here. Otherwise, it would already have been done. So the driver for the solution must focus on collaboration between the providers' logistic services. Collaborative logistics. And there are some questions here. In this question here, this last question. From this derives risk coverage. Imagine that a system is capable of containing various service catalogs from various competing companies and provide various solutions to go from here to Brussels. This is easy, there are direct flights, but from here to Limassol, you need several scales in Frankfurt, Rome, and so on. But you may buy a ticket to Rome and then another ticket from Rome to the Limassol. You can do it. But who guarantees that a delay in the flight from here to Rome and from Rome to the destination will prevent you from catching that flight? If the schedule works, everything is all right. But if there is a delay, you have costs of parking in the terminal, costs of delivering late. Who covers those risks? See the idea? These are real, existing, everyday risks. The ship is delayed, there was a malfunction, the cargo is there halted, and it will not arrive at a duty that on that day will be taken to the United States. And so it will take on another one that goes 2 days after because there was a delay, a dysfunction that has cost. Who covers those risks? So when we are integrating, we have to assume the risks and charge those risks, of course. Nobody assumes risks for free. We must charge a value that covers the risk in terms of what the company manages, the services the company manages. If that function of integration is passed on to an e-marketplace, the system, it is the platform that includes a fee or an integrator to pay for the risk. How do we manage this opportunity? And there we have a forwarder working in a different way. And that's why we have APAT. That's why we have in the project the associations of forwarders. Focus on the client, focus on collaboration, and the necessity of a holistic vision that allows us to scientifically be glued to reality and represent reality and do things in the real world, being professional. Let's finally go to the second movie. Now it's dark enough. This is a very interesting film. It was created for a final meeting of a previous project. In 12-14 December 2013, the meeting. And so we did a movie to tell the sector what is the expectation of the client. Because the sector is fine, and it works only reacting to something. The client asks for a service, and then he reacts. And 2 days later, things get complicated, and he's on a tight schedule. And if the forwarder is late, it will put it in the price and no longer be competitive. And so there are these trade-offs. And that is what we wanted to show, the opinion of the client. In the middle of December, who was the client? The client that was more stressed. Who do you think he was? The most stressed client? Our audience online, do you want to guess? Who was the most stressed client? Try and guess. Santa Claus. Santa Claus. Okay. He is the most stressed logistic services client. And so we did a video, a very funny video. Let's hope it will work. I'm interrupting the film to call your attention to the following. We have Santa Claus in a space environment, because if you were in between Leixões, Sines, Valença, Genoa, La Spezia, that would be much more complicated. We have delocalized Santa Claus into space, and so people understand the concept without looking at their navel, belly button. The second part of this film talks about the technology underlying this. You saw the representation of the routing. Let me just justify why. That routing that were applied here were the origin of algorithms that are now used for navigation in roads, and we generalized them to apply them to a service network, not a road network, and to take them from there to the service network or to the other network. The origin of those algorithms was at Inestec, and we generalized those concepts of road navigation and apply them to a service network that is a different network with different constrictions and principles that are common. Let's watch now the second part.
I'm sorry, but I'm having some problems here. I would have liked to stop it here. I'm sorry for that. This is an important aspect. A company has different contexts of relationship here. This can be the cooperation of a forwarder that interacts with the intra-platform. How is this done? It can be done through an access point in which the company is connected to it, that by then it connects by other access points to Intra. And it's a relation between systems. It's not without sync. It's not sending a message and waiting for an answer. It's our system has the capacity of interacting in real time with the other system on the other side. This is not applied in practice. This doesn't exist. And also, one of the great problems within companies is that they have a big set of systems, but each one interacts externally and even between them in an erratic way. So there is a component here its collaboration context that manages the context of collaboration through which every systems of the company relate themselves to the exterior. If this component is made for a sector, this component here allows that the company can relate to it and through it can relate to all the others. See? So this means that the efficiency and the quickness in the dissemination of those systems in the terrain, the strategy of dissemination of anything, if it's not prepared ahead, it will fail later in the journey. So I will give you a little more of the video. So for example, we all have to download an app from an app store, almost everyone. If there is anyone happy enough not to do so a different way of conducting business. Do you think it's reasonable to have kiwi coming from New Zealand to Portugal if bananas that come from Madeira are more expensive than bananas that come from Ecuador, for example? This has to do with production costs, of course, but it has to do with something else also. The price at shelf of the products in the supermarket have not incorporated with the environmental cost of logistics, as long as it comes from the production to the supermarket. Because when it does, so you want a kiwi from New Zealand, okay, this has an environmental and fee above it, so that's very expensive, okay. It's very simple. Plant them in your backyard. We are getting near from the production centers to the consumption center. This has an impact in the environment that it's extraordinary. And policy new interruption because I have an important aspect to mention here. The concept of logistics single window is not a platform, I don't know where the logistics of all the planet Earth or the galaxy are located concerning the Santa Claus case that I showed you before. If we were to think on the architecture like this, we will not get anywhere. Of course, that between the French and German, there is the Franco-German alliance, but they are seen if the services in France are published in a German platform, or if vice versa. And also within Israel and the Gaza Strip, there are realities that should foster and promote initiatives per se. What's important is that these initiatives have the capacity and the ability of interoperate with each other, okay? And why? Because I'm not going to publish the services in Madrid because people culturally simply don't accept this. The world is exactly like this. And so we privilege a solution of architecture that could be applied on different commercial realities. Who knows how businesses made in Sri Lanka are people there? Not me. I don't care. I don't even care. In Sri Lanka, those who know how to do logistics there have an initiative that develops and organizes that logistics, and that organization needs to relate with my organization, you see? And these are like mushrooms, and the space is completely covered by organized platforms. This is the capacity, the ability of producing results throughout time. Even more, there are realities in Africa, for example, that simply don't care about this. For example, in the southern part of Brazil, Santa Catarina, in the state of Santa Catarina, has important ports, and it's the Silicon Valley of the South America. In Santos, for example, the volume is the biggest container port of Latin America. But if we go to the northern parts, to Fortaleza, they have a different mindset. They want to invest in infrastructures, in concrete. They are not thinking about the business. And so these spaces cannot develop at the same time. Things need to arise, and the ones that arise are anchors and leverages to pull the others. It's one of the techniques of innovation. So the solution is to be able that in the terrain, thanks to regional solutions, and it's not north and south, it's a commercial reality that wants to cover a region and organize the logistics of that same region. And as long as it appears in the other, I have a formula to relate myself door to door with, because in the middle I have Intra with maritime services. Can you see the beauty of this situation? Throughout time, I will placing in the terrain solutions that have benefits. Doesn't need to be ready to generate benefits. So the strategy of dissemination is absolutely central and fundamental in this aspect. Let's keep hearing it. projects are paid and financed by the public sector, whether it be commission. So the result of this pilot project are public domain, the platform that we developed here in Portugal, that will be instantiated in Brazil, in Germany, Spain, Italy, not certain yet, in Cyprus, and in another country that I forget, whatever. But this will be instantiated. It's an embryo of an original initiative that will develop that embryo in the business city, that region, in that commercial space. Where you have logistics there organized, it's a foreland to which I am capable of selling services door to door and even increasing my GDP. See? So this is a point of view of the client of logistics services. And so we made a point of having as the client companies that integrate logistics services also. They are also clients. They hire architecture regarding the tree of services. And so, based on this need of clients of logistics services, we have developed a concept which is the concept of what is single window logistics. We need to formalize this concept. And we did it in 2011. And we got there in 2011, hearing this we are here in time in the MEL project. We have established the business's requirements. We formalized the concept. And why we only picked this up at that time for TrainMoS 2013? Why did we pick this up now? Because before, we did our homework. First, we addressed the node of the port. When we finished, then we started on the network. Exactly because this connection between the highways of the sea, they brings us an opportunity. We have a role, a proactive role, because you are in an interface of both things. This does not mean that it is a port of assurance hosting the business platform. This will be said by the business domain, not me. Then we worked the concept and the platform of logistics services through the MEL project. Currently, the TrainMoS, this project ends at the end of this year, in December, in 2015. And then we have some projects to disseminate this idea to commercial spaces. We have the Atlantis project that will disseminate this concept of placing the embryos in the northeast of France, in Brest, and also in the United Kingdom, in Liverpool, land of the Beatles and Rolling Stones, I believe, right? So we will place the embryos on those commercial spaces under the Atlantis project in order to gather a competitive and qualified offer on the Atlantic Portuguese strip in the northeast of France and the space of the four lands of Liverpool that will then, either for Ireland or for London and beyond. We also have another project, which is the Impact project, which is Unified Implementation Action. It's E-Impact. We are in partnership with the Port of Lisbon, with Italian ports, with Spanish ports, French, Norwegian and Polish ports, if I'm not mistaken. And this is to approach not pragmatic aspects as to spread an experience that is already acquired, but to work subjects that have to do with the distant future on one hand, which is the synchro-modality and the physical internet regarding perspective, but on the other hand, because we need to have benefits from the things that we do, or we are delaying them, on the other hand, we can develop the idea of extended gateways in our interland, okay? And many more initiatives will exist, of course, I believe, especially from the scope of dissemination. We need to disseminate in order to appear those mushrooms in four lands with whom we will relate ourselves with. And so the formal concept, it's not a platform, it's a network of platforms that operates among themselves. And this network of platforms, it's a marketplace. It's a marketplace of business interoperating platforms. And in fact, it's a marketplace, platforms that are interoperating among themselves, and the use, it's very interesting. But they interoperate with which purpose? One client of logistics services approaches a platform, for example, here in Cyprus. It's looking for a solution to export to, I don't know, Salamanca. In this platform of Cyprus, he has an organized logistic to be able to sell to Salamanca free on board in Cyprus of a certain ship, okay? That regional platform covers the regional logistics there, and so it has the ability of performing the business selling free on board using that platform. It's not ex-works, it's free on board. If this platform can interoperate like all the others with the Intership in Portland, through this platform, what can the client do? Can buy logistics to incorporate in its sale a product that sells cost insurance and freight in Leixões Port, for example. Okay? In a single platform, in the single contact point, the client, thanks to interoperability, it's not selling FOB and sells CIF for all the world. If in the C4 land, in the CIF foreland, there is a platform that organizes logistics in that foreland, and that platform interoperates with mine, what can he get from here? He can get logistics to sell door to door. And my friends, this is the first European project that for the first time places on the field a strategy to cover door-to-door services involving motorways of the sea. And the motorways of the sea, it's everything. It's a flag for Brazil also. We sell, for example, for Brazil, I don't know, pieces from Embraer made in Évora. We sell wine, our wine from Douro, and port wine also. What do we import from Brazil? Meat, for example, a lot of meat. Brazil is the main exporter of meat throughout the world.
Brazil alone covers 30% of exports of demands from Russia. It is not by chance that we have Brazilians as stakeholders as well. For the first time, we have in place a strategy that covers the problem in terms of door-to-door for the first time. Well, benefits. The benefits are many. These benefits have been referred before. I'm not going through them again. They were referred as an expectation and a solution. But we have tried that the project was enough pragmatic to respond to people's expectations. And the representation you see now then tries to represent and tries to help explain all of this. The scenario, the background of all of this, you've seen it in the film, is the service catalog of the service provider of logistics services. These are in the project as an example. There are more. There are more, many more. Combi is one of the main railroad operators, German one of the main railroad operators in Europe. They have very well qualified services. The Louis Simões is a Iberian logistics operator, the cargo, air services logistics, and it is here for a reason. He is a stakeholder of the project. And why is he here? Because the client wants competitive offer. It does not want a platform to buy maritime services. He wants to confront that offer with other services, rail services, air transport. For example, Grupo Amorim spends 3 million euros a year in orders that are shipped by air to speed up delivery that has delayed their production. See? They have an interest in a platform that responds holistically to its needs. And these questions, it is our practice, good practice. We do not project solutions thinking about very concrete solutions, very small solutions, because if it were a different problem, we wouldn't have a solution. We need holistic, reliable solutions that are based in practice and in the contacts with stakeholders. It's not just peanuts. This represents something quite interesting. The service providers publish their services in the platform. They do not publish it. In fact, they are visible there. The services are indexed in the platform. You see CP Cargo publishing their services on a site? No, they don't do it. They have their services in their system and they index them to the platform. And they index them to the platform for their own use. That's the catalog. For use of the partners, another catalog. For use of client A, a specific catalog, specific conditions, and then the PDP catalog and all of that he uses occasionally. So what they do is indexing the catalogs to the platform. And when they are indexed, they are published as an offer. And when we talk about collaborative offer, they can themselves take the role of integrators and combine the offer of several providers. See, these are the catalogs of various providers for the same type of service. For example, when a client has a task here, asks for a proposition, that proposal has 3 options for this service, and another 3. And in this one, there are only 2. This is multimodality, a composite service. This is a bottleneck. This is great. This is the only one that complies. So this one is making money already. This one here has more competitors in this corridor. And this one here is probably the forwarder. Customs, why not? It's also a service. And these services here are combined in collaborative offers that integrators made available for clients in real time. This is a different way of doing business. A collaborative platform that boosts collaboration among the various. Yes? the various service providers of logistics, and they make their services visible and collaborate with the partners and competitors. They collaborate by building solutions that are optimized. The forwarder will not disappear. It will have more work, proactive work, not reactive work, but proactive work. It will have more work, and the business is transforming. So this offer that these integrators, they are prepared through all of these possibilities from different competitors. He publishes it in the space that connects with the client of the service. This is the concept of the service. And beyond that, we have logistics service providers indexing catalogs here, but we also have other platforms with their own catalogs. See? This is what the European Union Commission doesn't know, but this was really research. This had research involved. We were faced with a problem for which we had no solutions, or found no solutions in the scientific community, so we conducted some research. The European Commission is not listening to us, and they don't know about this. They don't fund this part of the project. They fund others, but not this. So we'll tell them about this at the end. But we had to conduct research, scientific investigation, to be able to interoperate all of these platforms. But it was exhilarating. So other platforms also index their catalogs. Routing algorithms may find composite solutions among these catalogs. The platform itself may propose the client directly to the client that compete with the competitor solutions. These are issues of governance that must be studied. Nobody does this randomly. These are issues of governance that I referred to. They need to be discussed and addressed. Those that the sponsors mentioned. UBL, for example, the way of connecting among these people are an ISO regulation, because it has been adopted by many sectors. That's why it is now ISO. We have had contact with some portals. I won't say names, but I was amazed because they knew nothing of this. This is very strange. A lot of people are crystallized, waiting for the dollar, thinking that they can live without being dynamic. European Commission has 179 million euros to fund this ISO regulation. That is now in the version UBL 2.1, and we have detected flaws in that version, and we are now working to update those formats, these exchanges of systems, to integrate the production UBL in the version 2.2. Do you know what GS1 is? The entity that standardizes barcodes distribution. It is now in this world. The car regulator, Cosetta from the car industry, retail is GS1, IATA, selling everywhere in this ISO format. In China, Lojing and TAF, the railroad, and another entity. And in maritime, the Asia-Pacific space as well, all these entities are now working to standardize and apply this in real life. And the other half of the world is doing that. So we need many projects to disseminate knowledge. And then some businesses close because they were not alert to this new way of doing business. This is really the baseline for future developments in the interoperability of businesses, with three types of collaboration. The collaborative platforms, inside the platform and between the platform. Three ways of collaborating globally and collaborating between different platforms. In what concerns the pilot project, we already have this platform that will originate a spin-off, a Portuguese one. We also have the small apps. This is easy to demonstrate. If the organization of the training, we can offer a demonstration of these platforms. Real software working. And so we have many solutions.
The control tower, it's an app just for one simple trace cargo from one end to the other, cargo from the origin to the destination. It's all traced and incorporates the integration through the platforms. We just finished last week interoperability between the PSW and the LSW. The port is sold by the ship owner, but the information of tracking is not. The tracking info, the ship owner only makes it available after a week, and sometimes not even. So we have information in real time of what's happening. See? So we have information with value, it's relevant. And so the port can be sold by the ship owner, but the tracking are for us to sell to the entity that asks us that information of tracking or tracing. It's in a situation, and when it occurs, we just inject proactively the information. And that information is then managed in a product of the ecosystem of solutions called Control Tower that works with a core that I just told you before. Small apps are more evolved even for the client of logistics services. We have pilot solutions for that client to have a sourcing of solutions. With the Google Street Maps, we have to integrate and see this low coach of the United Nations with the postal codes in Portugal, Spain, Germany, France, with the localization of the mapping systems. We have to integrate all of this. Can you see the number of working hours that were needed to do this? How much it would cost an error within this context of this work? So we have solutions that we are able to show them to you, if you will. This would be interesting. At the end of November or beginning of December, we'll have the stakeholders meeting here where we'll present all of this. The people who are here at this course want to participate, even people online, they can reach us and see all those apps working. Okay, the case of Brazil. The case of Brazil, it's a case that's focused in Santos and Itajaí in terms of ports. Maybe Itajaí and Navegantes, it's the same thing. And a little bit to the south with Inditur, but it's even a smaller port. But it's a private port also, so we are in different realities, because if this is not to be applied in all the realities, we will stumble ahead. And in Brazil, we have here the export of cargo, so the stakeholder on the other side is generating the technology. It was a Polytechnic School of the University of São Paulo. And the user of the technology on the other side was ABIEC, was a Brazilian association of cargo exporting industries that mainly exports, and here in the Portuguese case, it exports through Lisbon. Mainly our import is through Lisbon. We have the special meat in a special region at the north part, so we don't need the Brazilian meat at all. So we export wine, we export from Évora through Sines, which is also a stakeholder of the project. Through Sines, we export two very interesting things. Parts from the Embraer factory that go to Brazil through Santos and Navegantes also. And we export to Italy, to our friends online. Through Sines, the marble from Vila Viçosa that goes to Carrara, and then it is worked in Carrara and is exported as and that's it. This is very important, which is to bring interests to compatibility. Everyone has an interest. The interest of Brazil is to trace the meat throughout the distribution plan. And this scheme of platforms with mechanisms of monitoring, of track and trace, allows them to have visibility that they nowadays can't. Today, the goods or the cargo gets to the port of Santos, it boards on the ship, and then it disappears from the map. Got there, it didn't, no one knows where and when. They know after a long period of time if they have a problem in a refrigerated container. They simply don't know about this, so what happens next? So the interest here is to have visibility in distribution in their exports. Our interest is that our products get there in conditions that are optimized also. And please note that imports and the veterinary control and phytosanitary control that it's made in Brazil, it's made by an institution, it's a PIF there, the Office for Frontier Verification, it's VZ Agro, it's the name of the association that controls the exports also of meat, for example. And it is the surveillance is made with a bilateral agreement with PIF on this side. It's already made, so when we surveil and monitor the cargo before it gets to the port, we have the blue channel, which is the project on the other side of the blue channel. They have all the information of the customs clearance, everything, it's there. So it arrives at port instead of 3 days, 1 hour, and the ship is here in the port of Santos. And the port of Santos, it's not easy. The THCs in Santos are sold $570, $570. $570. So the cost of operating in Santos, because of storage, of other subjects that I will not address here in public, are very high, quite high, really. $570. The cost of THC in Leixões are about $100, $105. But then the ship owners sell by $140, $160. It's the port that is expensive and that their freight is cheap. These are the trade-offs and the positioning, the commercial positioning. This is a reality, and that's it, period. I'm not bad-mouthing anyone. So we are interested that the wine arrives here and penetrates this market. For example, it is an example. We are working with Sograp. I'm so sorry that it's not Casa Freirinha because I love the red wine from Esqueva. And so I'm sorry to say that we are not exporting yet, but it needs to be an interest on both sides in order to bring these things to the field, because if there is no interest, it goes without saying with the parts from Embraer and other things that we can identify, we open the array of products and optimizing things. There is a work here to extract ore from Brazil, and the ore here is logistic services, of course, and this takes time, but it needs to be done by them. It's not for us to go there and do that work. This is an approach, a regional approach here. I don't care how they do logistics here, because sometimes it's not like this. It's here by roadway. But Brazil then distributes by the coast, and they do this also by the hydroways with more than 2,000 kilometers throughout 3 countries, Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay. And the Amazon, that area there, up to Manaus, that's a sea almost. It's bigger than the Sea of Palha in Lisbon. Stakeholders.
We have many. Let me just highlight some. FETEA and APAT, the Federation of Forwarders in Spain. And then ATEA from Catalonia. APAT is Portuguese. The railroad offered here, PP Cargo, collaborating with the project, forwarder, shipping companies as well. We have indexed the catalogs of all Portuguese ship owners because they didn't publish them. They didn't do it in the shipping portal, and we index them now. All the offer is now indexed to the pilot platform. In terms of loaders, you have Camada, still a strong exporter in the textile industry. I'm sure you know them. Sona Indústria, Embraer, Amorim, and it is the cork factory working with us, not Amorim, but it is the same company from the same group, Unicer, the beer company, the beer producer. I like it, their beer, very much. The flavor. Cereales, from the food industry, exporting to Brazil as well. They put the cargo on the shore, and it is already cleared. The flexibility of distribution, IKEA goes through Italy or Germany, I'm not sure, maybe through Italy. Network managers, we have the port of La Spezia, coordinating the wider moors. Leixões, Kiel, Lisbon, the stakeholder, Aveiro as well, Rostock, Stins, another stakeholder, Barcelona stakeholder as well. Estradas Portugal, the Portuguese road company. They don't want surprises. Creditus and Jota Canão, another company is working with us. They are already working with us. The tax authority, customs and tax authority, our Portuguese authority, they participate through the Leixões Customs. The tax agency, the Spanish one, and the Italian tax authority as well. There was a meeting in Rome 2 months ago with a lot of discussion. We have contacts with the Port of Hamburg, and with the Morocco Association Nationale des Ports, the ports of Morocco. These people believe in this concept and they're working these ideas with us and combining them with their diversified realities. That's what we are doing now. The project I mentioned before, the Atlantis Interoperability Services, and this needs to be widespread and disseminated in order to be able to have door-to-door. What is this as motorways of the sea? We have to have this holistic vision and offer solutions that are holistic, and that is it. Trade has no frontiers. These pilot projects are the opportunity to engage technology providers that will sell these projects and these solutions worldwide. Innovation is carried out through three axes. The first is the generator of the technology, the scientist that invents the technology, and passes science, transforms science into technology, thus creating technology. Then you have the technology taker, the company that takes the risk, faces the risk of transforming technology into a product and sells it. And then the third axis, the user of technology. In this case, ourselves in this case. The people who are engaged in the logistics sector. We are the users of this technology. If one of these pillars is missing, the result is not good. That is for sure. This is a successful model of integrating innovation in Europe, to have this pyramid with its three stages doing things and implementing them in the field. They are the anchor companies that attract the sector companies into these dynamics and implement them in the field. Let me give you the example that is apparently unrelated. What we are doing in the Douro River project, the River Information Service is going to be the test for other companies. The companies that have done this with us sell these solutions elsewhere, have no doubts about them. And they are already establishing contacts to sell elsewhere. And I sometimes go there and support them, pro bono, obviously, for free. This is how we get things done. Well, now these are some of the conclusions that I have referred before. Maybe you can read them later. I think that what is essential here, it is absolutely essential that you have understood this and the formulation of the concept. Let me repeat. Whenever you want to actually see these things, you can come to our meetings to see things happening in real life. I'm going out for a few minutes, and I have a challenge for you now. But I don't really have the courage to put you through this. This was an exercise, even those who are online, to do this exercise. Write down 6 subjects, 6 points in which ports should be prepared in order to innovate and accompany this question. Maybe you can send this through email, by email, Students online can do it as well. They already have the presentation by Commander Rui Cunha, and they know these issues, and it's later for those who are online. So it would be nice if they could do it afterwards. Well, or we can do just the second part, compile the different issues, and then we would discuss the score that each one provides. But it would be important that I would know what you understood of my message. And this is something new. I am not putting a bridge. I'm talking about what ports must do to prepare. I didn't tell you about it. I'm asking you to apply what I've said to what ports must do. In your companies, how do you implement this? Maybe we could do it in that way. One thing is to listen to people saying things. Another thing is in what way does that impact our companies, our realities? And now I would want to, what I thought was compiling the different contributions and produce a ranking, a rating of importance with the different suggestions. And I would go through your work and see how you rated the different issues and come up with the rating of the group. But because we started later, maybe we shouldn't finish later because it is quite late, in fact. I am sorry that we didn't come to the end, but let's sum up the idea. Please make a list using this spreadsheet with 6 lines, filling in the 6 most important issues or actions to be taken by seaports. What should ports do to be prepared for this dynamics that is already taking place? Okay? And you have my email there in the slide. Please send your answers by email to me. And then I will assess your classification, combining it with Commander Rui Cunha, who did the first part of this module. And we will get together, and then the organization of the seminar will give you feedback. Now there is a question from the audience. Good afternoon. We are now in the phase of question and answer. For as long as you want to, I am available. I want to say something. In my opinion, using football slang, we would need an extra part. We need to go on longer and after. 2 questions. We mentioned the integration of best practices in public platforms that come from private platforms. Nevertheless, the public service and the concept first arrived, first served is always guaranteed. What I mean is there a public service domain? One thing does not have an impact on the other. What public service is supposed to comply to do it regarding the concessionary in relation to terminal has a set of rules that it has to comply with. And those rules will not change tomorrow. Maybe the algorithm can be changed, not the rules, but it provides services to the transporter, not to the cargo. It can.
And the storage service or inspection that can be charged to the client. That's what is being done today. No one needs to do something different of what is being done today. One of the things that a bit reality in the commercial space can instantiate its platform, it's justifiable because of the algorithms are different from one space to the other. So it's not related one thing with the other. There is a constraint that the order of arrival of a ship that initiates operations at the terminal, this is a constraint that already exists in the sector. And so it's not because we don't have to change that constraint because of this, and this will not change that constraint. This is nothing to do one thing with the other. It could, but it doesn't. So the second and last question is, how can we go from the algorithms of routing to D, point A to point B to point C, to a dimension of logistic distance and of the supply chain intelligence? How did it evolve that? Because the routing algorithms are made over catalogs of services that are then within physical movements, and that's the connection to mapping, right? I will give you an example of algorithms for roadway. I'm going backwards, but in my previous car, I had a navigation system where I would choose the destiny and then looking for hotels at the destiny. These are the services at the destiny or at the destination, giving me the possibility of on the navigation system itself to make something that was quite funny. I would choose the hotel and it would call directly to the hotel, and I knew the price and everything because the information system associated with the navigation system that would give the cost. And so I would choose the hotel according with the cost. It could have that. So we are cohabitating services with location-based services also, right? And the location-based services, for example, when the company Cerdão of transports transfer something for the postal code of Portugal to the postal code of Italy, that has a partner in Italy that comes here, and then they go there, and so they are one way or the other. When they have this, they have services that are georeferentiated between these two destinations and with a lag just of transport in the middle. And so they are also, regarding level of abstraction, they can be, let's put it like this, the level of abstraction can generalize this concept. It was this work of generalization that we have been doing, because while the algorithms of roadway navigation did not take into account all these particularities which are the needs of the sector. I don't know if I answered your question, but it was tricky. This took 7 months to do. And regarding the supply chain intelligence, the possibility of withdrawing data to improve and optimize the network of the supply chain is that previewed data to be able to optimize, to give feedback of the supply chain. Regarding to optimize, for example, if we are now with problems, if that channel brought many delays, for example. Oh yeah, feedback of the satisfaction degree, of course. That's one of the modes that it's called completion, I believe. where you bring feedback from the execution and another question of governance that needs to be debated. And that feedback can be incorporated and included. That's a good practice for the sites to sell hotels that have a degree of satisfaction of the client, that can go to the website to rate. We have that with the situation of the clients. And things have been debated, for example, if the service providers could make the rate of the clients. Why not? There are good clients and bad clients. Or do you think that the client is always right? Of course not. Sometimes the client doesn't pay at all, so. These themes were debated regarding specifications. This doesn't mean that they are all in the embryo. They're not. But up until the embryo to be adult, it can take 2.5 years to 3 years, more or less. Before that, you will see platforms like this in production. I hope that with your catalogs in it. Any further questions? And you guys online? No questions? You are already on weekend time. Okay. I hope that you send me that sheet with the 6 main actions that the board should take into account. That. What are your... Please don't fall in the trap of copying things that are in the presentation, okay? That's not the point. But think, make this exercise of thinking. In face of this reality, what can a port do? And what does it have to do? It needs to be reactive. Can it lead being reactive? It needs to be proactive. What is proactiveness? So try to consubstantiate this and then we will publish just a subjective judgment. Certainly understand. I will rate it with Commander Cunha, not with you. So it would be funny to be with you, it would be good to be with you, but you want to make questions, so... Okay, gentlemen, thank you for bearing with me. The presentations, I believe, Felipe will send you all the presentations, all the subjects. I have some presentations also that complement this presentation that has things that are not here, but I decided not to publish them. So Monday you'll have them, and you can see that they are made available together. In the video itself, it's also available. You saw that the front of the ship was red, which is the nose of the reindeer.